when volatility is low, it means options are inexpensive, and that means they're cheap to buy. We don't want to sell cheap options, we want to buy them. Inverted yield curve that gave us that little pop last week means that I really want neutral strategies like straddles. And the reason why is because inverted yield curve signals, and you've probably been reading articles or seeing news related to yield curve. I know that Google has reported a severe uptick in queries about yield curve and recession and stuff, so it's on our mind. But yield curve inversion will signal that there is a potential recession coming. And there's a whole bunch of people that every time the yield curve inverts, you'll hear a whole bunch of people talking about why it's going to be different this time, why it doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a recession. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff, and we've been talking a little bit about those things in the community. Since we don't really cover yield curve here, I just want to point out that yield curve inverting doesn't necessarily mean the market's going to tank tomorrow and we're in a recession. It just means that the market can actually go for a long time and still be bullish, even though the yield curve is inverted. But the yield curve does signal, and actually what we believe it causes a recession, but it takes a while for it to filter out into the market. So it can be a long while, sometimes a couple of years. We're watching it, but the market could go up. So there's a bunch of catalysts out there right now. If the US and China gets on the same page with their trade war that's going on, and if the UK and the EU are able to hammer out some details of the Brexit thing that's going on, if both of those things resolve themselves in a friendly way, it could be a catalyst for a very bullish move in the market. So it could be a big move. We're expecting a big move with the low volatility. We're not expecting the move to necessarily be up or down. And that's really, the recession could mean a big down. The resolving of the other issues, trade war and Brexit, could signal up, a big move up. And so I really like to have straddles when there's big potential catalysts for either direction. I hate to pick direction because it's a 50-50 bet. It's a 50-50 bet. If you flip a coin, that's as good as picking a direction on the market. With this low volatility that we have right now, last week was a great opportunity to be opportunistic on our credit spreads. So one of the things, so if you have any of our services or have had them in the past, when we get into a market like this with low volatility, we're expecting a big move to happen. And we actually spend a lot of time stress testing our prices when we try to find credit spreads ahead of time, because we want to make sure that we're getting a price that takes into account that we're expecting volatility to rise. So when volatility gets low, we have to be opportunistic in our credit spreads. And we have, and I'm excited to tell you this, I mentioned it a little bit last week, but we have a new tool, but it'll let you stress test your strategies and say, if volatility is really low right now and volatility rises in the future, what are my chances? What prices do I need to get? And so the feature is called FOV-IV, and it's a conditional sampling. So it goes back in time and says, if the implied volatility is where it is right now, give me a measurement of how the stock performed only when volatility was above where it is right now. It allows us to do the same kind of historical, how does the stock perform analysis that the FOV does, but it does it under a conditional circumstance where implied volatility, we can look above the current implied volatility or below the current implied volatility. And it gives us an idea of how the stock behaved in best conditions or in the worst conditions. And so we can do some stress tests that way.